Hello and welcome. Welcome to the Kendo UI Q3 release keynote. My name is Burke, Holland, and I'm the Director of Developer Relations here at Telerik. I'll be the MC for today's event before I turn it over to our panel of awesome demo presenters. First up, like we always do, let me encourage you to drop into the Q&A panel if you've got any audio or video issues. Even if you don't have issues, please drop in and give us your comments. If you have questions, anything you want to say, we'd love to hear from you. If we're not presenting, we'll be in there answering your questions, so please get in there, fire away. This webinar is being recorded and will be available in a couple of hours on YouTube. So don't stress out if you get pulled away in the middle or your audio-video issues prove to win out in the end. Man, this release is a big one for us. It's not just big because of the features that we're delivering in this third major release for Kendo UI, just in 2015 alone. It's big because this one is personal. When I first joined Telerik in 2011, Todd Anglin told me about a project to build a world-class UI in JavaScript and fix the broken promises of HTML5 and the modern web. The project was codenamed Kendo. Developers were disillusioned at that time. The browser's support for modern features was erratic, and most of us were struggling to keep up with all of the new capabilities that the browser vendors were implementing as the web screamed forward, and we scrambled to try and keep pace while still supporting older browsers and making sure that no users were left behind. We were also cobbling together bits of UI from across the vast wilderness of the jQuery plugin ecosystem. Development was tricky, support was super complicated, and compliance was virtually impossible. The promise of Kendo was simple: a desktop class UI using HTML5 in modern browsers and degrading gracefully with robust polyfills in older browsers. It was nirvana. Write your web application and keep your sanity. Developers would worry about the functionality of the application, and Kendo would ensure that all of the widgets and functionality that was needed to power those widgets was present. Things would just work. That was the promise that I signed on for in 2011 because I believed in the premise. We decided to make one last tweak to Kendo, and in November of 2011, Kendo UI was born. Today marks the 4th anniversary of that epic launch. Since then, the Kendo UI community has grown to several 100,000 developers. Developers writing .NET, developers writing JavaScript, developers writing Java, Ruby, PHP, Classic ASP, WordPress, SharePoint, SAP, Salesforce. Never before had we seen so many distinct developers united under a common cause to deliver the best web experience possible. So today, we hope you'll join us as we say happy birthday to UI. Now, if you know us, you know that we're big on giving away things here at Kendo UI. We just love to do it. We've always given away some great prizes for our webinars, and this time around, we have a couple of different ways for you to win in our special birthday celebration. First, we're going to be giving away a sweet iPad Pro setup. It's the full package: the iPad Pro, the keyboard, the stylus that Apple invented and then called a pencil. Hey, listen, that's awesome. All you have to do to win this is to share the happy birthday to UI page with the hashtag KendoUI@4. I've even created this nice, convenient bit.ly link here for you so you can easily tweet this out. You can do this now. It is not too late. We're also giving away 100 special edition Kendo UI birthday shirts. These are indeed special. They are limited edition run American Apparel shirts. These will no doubt become collector's items in no time. You won't be able to get these anywhere else. Just by attending the webinar, you are in the running for one of these shirts. We've got an iPhone 6s today for the best feature suggestion. We've done this in the past couple webinars, and we just love the feature suggestions that we get from you. In order to do this, all you got to do is drop into the Q&A panel and tell us what you think Kendo UI should be doing next. Of course, you're going to want to know whether or not you've won one of these fantastic prizes, and in order to do that, you're going to need to follow the official Kendo UI or Telerik Twitter accounts. We'll tweet the winners from both of those locations, so make sure you follow those accounts if you're not already, so you can also stay up to date with what we're doing. Now, first up, we've got Jen Looper, who is going to show you the all-new Kendo UI spreadsheet widget. This is one of our most requested widgets of all time, and it's a full spreadsheet right in your browser. Jen is also going to be covering some of the hot new data viz features, including one of our most requested features of all time, chart, pan, and zoom. All my data viz peeps out there just went crazy, I know. Our resident data viz wonk, Mr. John Bristowe, can feel the love. One of my favorite new additions is our new Nova theme. This is a brand new theme. We love themes, you love themes. We released this for Kendo UI Mobile, and it's just the hottest theme that we've ever made. We've extended this theme for the web and data viz, and we're releasing it with this Q3 release. Jen's going to cover that as well. Good luck, Jen. You've got 12 minutes, and you're going to have to get all of this worked in. We'll see how you do. Next, we're going to have the one and only John Bristowe come and show improvements that we're shipping just for our Visual Studio developers. Along with our new spreadsheet widget, we have integration with the Telerik document processing libraries. Now, document processing is a somewhat boring phrase that really means the ability to manipulate Microsoft Office documents in a browser and then get them back out in physical form. We've got new app templates for both Kendo UI and MVC, and we've got some hot new scaffolding for the scheduler, which we've learned from you is one of the hardest widgets for people to configure, so we've released some tools to help make that easier. And lastly, John has some big news about NuGet and ASP.NET vNext, but I'm not going to steal his thunder. Cody Lindley is then going to be taking us to the bleeding edge of web development, and he's going to cover web components and Angular 2, and the integrations that Kendo UI is shipping with this release. If you're new to web components or Angular 2, which honestly is probably most of us, then this is just for us. We're always looking at what's coming next for web developers, and we've been working hard to make sure that Kendo UI just works with both web components and Angular 2. So much to do, so little time, I better stop talking. So with that, I'm going to hand the mic to Jen Looper, developer advocate at Telerik, an all-around extremely likable human being. If you haven't met Jen at a conference, you are seriously missing out. So Jen, with that, the stage is yours.
Thanks, Burke. Hi, everybody. Jen here. I'm a developer advocate at Telerik. Today I'm going to be talking about the new spreadsheet widget, and I'm also going to discuss some enhancements made to the chart and the Gantt chart, and we're also going to take a look at the new Nova theme, which is available for web and mobile in Kendo UI. And just to let you know, the spreadsheet is in beta, so what I show you today may change in the future, but I think I can give you a pretty good overview of what's going to happen. And so I figured out as I was going through my creation of these demos is that spreadsheets actually, they may not seem glamorous, but they're actually really useful. They're useful for financials, planning, bookkeeping. So in my demos, I decided to use it to plan a party for Kendo UI. As we know, it's Kendo's birthday. So I thought, let's just demo the spreadsheet by creating the most awesome Kendo UI party ever created. So here I've fired up a website on my local computer, and you can see that from the get-go, the spreadsheet widget allows you to style and change the look and feel of your content. So you can bold it, underline it, and you can always go back by clicking that little back button. You can also change the colors of the cells. Oh, that's gorgeous. Change it back the other way. That's much better. You can change the font, and you can always go back. And you can change the font size. Looks much better. Go back. So you can also add some filters. In this case, I want to filter by whether the text contains a C and a Y, let's say. So you can apply that just from the front end, and it works very nicely. Let's go back. And you can always export your work to Excel. There's another tab called Insert, and you can insert some columns, you can insert rows, and you can really play with the way your spreadsheet looks from the front end without ever having to touch the code. So let's refresh this. There's another tab with some data manipulation, and you can choose your sorting. Okay, let's take a look at what's going on behind the scenes here. I'm going to open up my code, and you'll notice that I've included a script that is enabling the Excel export. That's that JS zip min file. We scroll down a little bit more. We see this div with the ID of spreadsheet right here, and you can see that that is the one line of code that enables the entire spreadsheet. But what enables the magic of the spreadsheet, the really awesome things you can do with it, are some of the fun things that I've commented out. We're going to just uncomment them progressively and see what's going on. So what I want to do is I want to add a nice big header that's going to say that this spreadsheet is a list of party guests. So I'm just going to uncomment this code, which is a bunch of cells, and refresh the page. Oh, that's not exactly what I wanted. What I need to do is actually merge the cells. So I'm going to merge cells A1 through H1, that top row of cells. And you can see when we refresh the screen that this will give me a nice big purple header. That's perfect, exactly what I wanted. And you can see how you can really customize the color and the font size. Here I've added a background color of purple, beautiful purple, and white text and a nice big font size. I'm going to add another row of headers, and I'm also customizing them very nicely with a different color, giving them a centered text with the white font. Let's take a look. So here, different purple, and I've added some nice headers on row 2. It's starting to look really nice. While I'm at it, I'm also going to add a filter. So let me uncomment this code here, and we're going to put on the H column, we're going to put a filter so that we can go ahead and filter the data. Refresh the screen, and you see the filter appear. And you can see how you can go ahead and apply filters to your data, and it works very nicely, just as if you were using that filter button from the front end. Okay, let's go back to the code and take another look at another customization. Here I'm going to go ahead and set up a formula for a particular cell, which is going to give us the sum total of the RSVP'd party guests. So it's that H column that we're going to ask to total into the total cell at the bottom. So here you can see that I've set the formula in total to get the sums. Another great customization is that you're able to format the spreadsheet on a cell-by-cell level. So for these dates, I'm going to go ahead and format them so that they look a little bit nicer. Let's go back to the code. And on the cells where we have dates, I'm just going to format them so I just see a full month and a short date. Refresh the screen, and you can see the date format looks awesome. Another thing I'd like to show you is how to add a validator to a cell in your spreadsheet. So here we're going to add a validator into a cell to make sure that the data that we enter is between 1 and 10 on the number of guests column. So we add the validator, and you can see a little red triangle show up in the corner. And you can see when you mouse over, you get an error message saying that the number needs to be between 1 and 10. So we add a 99 into this field just to show that it's going to be invalid. The red triangle is still there, and we do get the pop-up saying that this is an invalid number. Let's change it to 9 to show that we can clean up our data. And you can see that we don't have that error message. Let's take a look now at how you can enable frozen columns in your spreadsheet. Here I'm enabling 2 frozen columns. Refresh the screen, and you can see how there's a line, and if you scroll over, you can see that the first 2 columns are frozen. Very, very useful for comparing data. Let's go ahead and enable frozen rows. We'll enable the top 5 rows to be frozen here. Refresh the screen, and you can see that if you start scrolling up, the top 5 rows are frozen as well. Frozen from the column and frozen from the row. Very, very useful. And finally, I want to show that you can use your shift and arrow keys to both select columns, select multiple rows, and key from cell to cell. So we've enabled some nice keyboard shortcuts in the spreadsheet that I think you're going to enjoy. So up until now, I've shown you how to take hard-coded data and import it into your spreadsheet and manipulate it via code and on the front end. But for this demo, this part of the demo, I'd like to show you a more common use case, which is to have data on the server in JSON format to import it into your spreadsheet and to manipulate it from there. So here we have a file that resides on the server. We've imported it into our spreadsheet, and we can now save it in various formats, including XSLT, CSV, tab delimited text, and JSON. And actually, for some reason, Visual Studio is opening up because Visual Studio. And the code that you need to enable uploading and downloading of files into your spreadsheet is pretty simple. You just have an upload and a download function, and you allow certain extensions to be uploaded and downloaded, and you're all set. Okay, we've looked at hard coding data. We've looked at loading data from a separate file into your spreadsheet. What about the ultimate test, which is basically to take data from a database and load it right up into your spreadsheet to read and write and do all those nice CRUD features that you need to take care of in a normal use case. Okay, let's take a look at what I've done here. I have a spreadsheet of birthday party delivery items, paper plates, champagne glasses, and streamers. This is a small list, but it tells you what you need for this party. And I have enabled an integration with Telerik backend services for this use case. And you can take a look at the way I've set it up in the back end. Here I have a data type, which is called deliveries, and I've put some data in there. And all I've had to do in my code is to use the Everlive JavaScript file to enable Everlive for my project. I've included a data source with the type of Everlive. I've made it transporting this type of data from the deliveries type and picking the fields that I specifically want to show. And then I have delineated the columns that I need, and in a very neat fashion, all of the data feeds right into my spreadsheet, and it looks great. I hope you've really enjoyed what I've showed you so far of the spreadsheet. I'm really excited to show it to you, but I'm also excited to turn the page a little bit now and to look at a little of the innovations we've done in charting. I'm going to show you a bar chart and a Gantt chart and some of the new things we've done with these particular widgets. We have made charts in general zoomable and panable so that you can mouse over and you can really zoom into details and then scroll back out and pan back out. It's really easy to integrate this. All you have to do is enable panable with lock on the y-axis or the x-axis, and zoomable. Just rotate your mouse wheel on the x or y-axis and you've got a zoomable and panable chart. It looks terrific. Turning now to the Gantt chart, you can tell that this party planning is out of control. We've got the entire software validation research and market research team ready to go for my wait staff. At any rate, what I do want to show you for the Gantt chart is that we've enabled resizable columns and templates. So you can put an entire template as one of the elements of your Gantt chart, and you can really style it nicely, even add your own CSS, whatever you like. I've added some photos, so you can take a look at how it looks. And all you have to do to make your columns resizable is to add that resizable flag. And the very last thing I want to talk about today is that we've introduced this beautiful new skin or theme called Nova, and we've enabled this theme for our charting. And I just want to show you what an area chart looks like with the Nova theme. Here's the spreadsheet, and you can tell the difference in themes. You can take a look at how it looks like in the different themes, including Nova. Looks terrific. And the great thing about Nova is that it looks so good on mobile. I use a Chrome extension to open up a mobile view, and I like to use this playground that we've developed specially for people who are developing for mobile devices to take a look at the responsive and adaptive implementations of some of our Kendo widgets. Here's some interesting side drawers and lists. And I don't know if you noticed, but the demo that I did of the spreadsheet actually uses Nova. I just used one of my favorite websites to give myself a couple of different colors. And I overrode just a few of the Nova colors with these party colors that I got from Color Lovers, and I created a completely different looking spreadsheet, but that still looks great just with a couple different colors. So happy birthday, Kendo UI! I'm so glad that you could join me today to take a look at some of the new spreadsheet capabilities, as well as some of the enhancements we've made to our already awesome charts. And now I'm going to pass the mic over to John Bristowe, who's going to explain a little bit more of what's new in this release. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Jen. Hello, everyone. It's great to be here. I'll be spending the next few minutes highlighting some of the latest features we've added to Telerik UI for ASP.NET MVC. These are a set of server wrappers we provide to make your experience with Kendo UI that much better when hosted on ASP.NET. We've got a lot to cover, so let's get started. The latest release of Telerik UI for ASP.NET MVC has 5 key features or improvements. They are new app templates during the project creation process, a new scaffolder for the scheduler server wrapper, which includes configuring your data binding, options, and events, support for the next version of ASP.NET and ASP.NET MVC, integration with the Telerik document processing library with the spreadsheet server wrapper, and a new private NuGet server and feed for customers. Let's begin by covering the new app templates in Telerik UI for ASP.NET MVC. Since we're all about celebrating birthdays today, I feel like it's a good time to let you know about my fictional party planning business called Party Planner. I may or may not be launching a Kickstarter soon. Anyway, I'll be taking the opportunity here to build it on the fly whilst demonstrating the latest features we've added to Kendo UI and Telerik UI for ASP.NET MVC. I'll start in the greatest IDE on the planet, Visual Studio. Let's build a website that will enable visitors to organize their parties. I'll create a new ASP.NET MVC application that will use Telerik UI for ASP.NET MVC. In the latest release of Kendo UI, we've added some new app templates for the project configuration wizard. These are listed under the project type drop-down list. The grid and menu option generates a responsive web page with a data-bound grid and menu structure. It provides a good starting point for ASP.NET MVC apps as it incorporates an underlying view model and controller for the grid. The other two options, mobile with Ajax navigation and mobile with server navigation, enable you to create mobile apps using Kendo UI Mobile and views loaded from a remote location. For this app, I'll generate a project using the grid and menu option. I'll also select the Nova theme, which has been integrated into this latest release. The other options listed here haven't changed since the previous release. These options control whether or not you wish to see the editor templates for things like email addresses, currencies, and so on, whether or not you wish to use the CDN-hosted styles and scripts for Kendo UI that we provide, global resources for localization files, and so on. And recently, we added right-to-left support for all our widgets, so if that's something you need, you can go ahead and select this option. To simplify things, I'll elect not to add a start project to my solution. Let's go ahead and create our project. Inside the Solution Explorer, you can see the structure of the project that's been generated. Our shared layout contains the script and style references for Kendo UI. We're also leveraging a responsive design through Twitter Bootstrap. For this page, you can see the menu server wrapper being utilized. Jumping over to our home view, you can see that we have the grid server wrapper with data binding to order view model. Finally, if we open up the grid controller, you can see that we're populating the grid with some dummy data. Of course, in a real-world scenario, the grid server wrapper would be bound to data in entities or objects representing remote data sources. Let's take a look at what the current solution looks like in Microsoft Edge. If you haven't taken the time to play with Edge, I'd urge you to do so. It's lean and mean, and really deserves some attention, especially for what it brings to the table in terms of web specifications it supports. Okay, here's our web page. As you can see, we have our navigation exposed through the menu server wrapper. Here's our grid that's bound to some dummy data. And since we're utilizing a responsive design, we can resize the page to see how the layout changes. This applies also to the widgets that are present on the page. As you know, Kendo UI supports responsive and adaptive layouts. In the next release of Kendo UI, we plan to expand the list of app templates to include ones like the Northwind demo we built earlier this year. The goal here is to get you up and running quickly with some great looking templates. Let's jump back to Visual Studio and start building out the Party Planner app. To save time, I'm using a different instance of Visual Studio with a project that includes some of the building blocks I'll need for this website. These building blocks include things like entities and view models that I'll be utilizing with our server wrappers. For the Party Planner website, I'll need a page that will allow visitors to see any upcoming parties. This is a perfect job for the scheduler widget of Kendo UI. To get this implemented quickly, I'll scaffold a new item for my project. The Kendo UI scaffolder was first introduced in the Q1 2015 timeframe and included options for creating a grid and chart. In our latest release, we've added the scheduler to this mix. I'll select Scheduler and click Add. Here, we provide a list of configuration options to control how the scaffolding is generated. I can specify the name of the controller and view, indicate the data context and model, denote options for the data source and views. I can even designate which events I wish to capture for the scheduler itself. I'll scaffold a scheduler that displays any upcoming parties for the week. I'll use an entity framework data context that I created earlier. This context provides access to a SQL Server Express database I have hosted on my machine. I'll also use the parties model, which contains a list of upcoming parties. When this is selected, you'll notice that I need to map the underlying schema to the properties that the scheduler expects in order to manage its events. The table you define doesn't have to contain only these values. You can expand upon it. However, you do need to include items like the event name, description, and so on in order to integrate into the scheduler widget. Let's define the mappings. It's worth noting that when your view model is scaffolded, it will implement the required iScheduler event interface. We'll take a look at this shortly. Next, let's review the options I can modify. I'm provided with an option to control how I wish to get data from the underlying model. I can also denote which operations I wish to support. Notice that we provide an option to specify whether or not I wish to support PDF exporting. PDF document integration is a core feature of Kendo UI. I can control which views I wish to display to the user. Here, I'll show a week view and an agenda view. And finally, I can also easily stub out handlers for each event that's generated by the scheduler. To demonstrate this, let's select handlers for the add and save events. When I click on the Add button, the scheduler controller and the corresponding view will be generated, along with the event handlers I indicated previously. Looking in the Views directory, I can see my view for the scheduler has been created. You can see that we are using the scheduler server wrapper with the party view model specified. Also notice that our views have been configured correctly. Here is the scheduler controller, which provides the action methods that will be targeted by the scheduler on the client side via AJAX. Notice we're using the entity model that we defined earlier to perform CRUD operations against the backend database. Let's take a look at what the scaffold looks like. This time, I'll run the app within Firefox. As you can see, the scaffold was created successfully. I have a data-bound scheduler widget displaying parties and planning. I can also perform a variety of operations through the scheduler. These operations will result in calls being made to the endpoint, which was also created. ASP.NET 5 has been gaining a lot of momentum. The .NET 1 release is just around the corner. The good news is that our server wrappers support ASP.NET 5 and ASP.NET MVC 6 today. To demonstrate this, I'll create a project with the web application template for ASP.NET 5. A great deal has changed with ASP.NET 5. It has been re-architected to make it lean and composable, but don't let that scare you. Much of the plumbing should be familiar. That stated, there are some new things you'll need to learn in order to start using it. Another good bit of news is that ASP.NET 5 is fully open source and available on GitHub. Now you can explore its internals and submit pull requests. It's a brave new world for ASP.NET developers. If you're interested in learning more about ASP.NET 5, then I'd recommend checking out the Telerik ASP.NET webinar, which we hosted in October. You can find a recording of the webinar up on our blogs. Let's take a look at the solution structure. Like I said, much of the plumbing should be familiar to you. Here we have the same old folders for our controllers, models, and views. We also have some new things like dependency management via Bower and NPM. We also have integration with Gulp, a build tool for automating workflows for the front end. Gulp enables you to manage assets like the markup, styles, and scripts of your app. These are output to the www root folder that you see here. The next step is to integrate Telerik UI for ASP.NET MVC. First, we'll integrate the package source via NuGet. Let's search for kendo.mvc and add the latest version that's available. It's important to note that version 2015.2.909 or later supports the latest versions of ASP.NET vNext. Once added, a dependency will be added to my project.json file. The next step is to register the UI for ASP.NET MVC helpers via the startup.cs file. This file effectively bootstraps the runtime, allowing you to configure services. In the configure services method, let's add a line that will register the helpers. Now let's open the viewimports.cs HTML file. Here, we'll include the kendo.mvc.ui namespace, which will qualify type names during compilation. Now, at this point, we're ready to take advantage of Kendo UI on the server side. However, that doesn't mean we can use it just yet. We need to now set up the client-side resources. We'll do this via Bower. Open bower.json, and here you'll find a listing of client-side dependencies. Let's include the one for Kendo UI. Notice that Visual Studio will auto-qualify the reference and provide versioning options for me to pick from. Once saved, Visual Studio will integrate with Bower to install the client-side dependency I just added for Kendo UI. We're almost done. Next, we need to include references for the client-side styles and scripts for Kendo UI in our shared layout view. I'll add the styles in the head and include script references for Kendo UI above the section for other scripts on this page. It's worth noting that these files are referenced against the lib folder, which is all managed by Bower and Visual Studio. We're now ready to start coding against the server wrappers. I'll open up the home view and add a date picker to the page. Let's now go ahead and see this in action. As you can see, Telerik UI for ASP.NET MVC supports the latest version of ASP.NET vNext. Pretty cool, eh? We've received a ton of positive feedback about the new spreadsheet widget we've introduced in the latest release of Kendo UI. For the server wrappers of the spreadsheet widget, we've integrated the Excel processing engine of the Telerik document processing library. In this way, you'll be able to specify an Excel file, import its content in the spreadsheet, view and modify its data, and then export it back without any extra coding. And finally, we've provided a private NuGet server and feed for professional customers. You can access it as a new package source inside of Visual Studio once you've provided your Telerik account credentials. This means that you can download and extract UI for ASP.NET MVC via its NuGet package directly from Visual Studio, all without having to visit telerik.com and download it from your Telerik account. I should mention that the NuGet feed for Kendo UI Professional is also available for people who prefer to use this package manager within Visual Studio as opposed to Bower. Well, that about wraps it up for me. I hope you're as excited as I am for these new features that we've added to Telerik UI for ASP.NET MVC. At this time, I'd like to turn things over to Cody.
Thanks, John. Like John said, my name is Cody Lindley. I'm a senior developer advocate working specifically on Kendo UI. If you have any questions about anything I talk about today or show you guys, feel free to send me a message on Twitter or drop me an email. Now, I'm going to be covering two things today. The first thing I'm going to be covering is instantiating Kendo UI widgets using custom elements. The second thing we'll look at is the integration of Kendo UI with Angular 2. Now, before I get started, I just need to make sure that everybody understands these two things I'm going to be covering today are just previews. They're very much still bubbling, so to speak, and we're just showing them here to keep everybody in the loop. But as I show them to you, please keep in mind that it's just a preview, sort of like a movie preview, in that we're going to show you bits and pieces, but we're not exactly sure where we're going to end up. We don't have the final solution yet. So with that said, let's jump in. Most of the code examples I'm going to be showing you today are inside the Telerik Kendo UI dojo. Now, if you're not familiar with this tool, it's very similar to JSFiddle or JSBin. The reason that I'm using it is so that you guys have the ability to go to this URL I'm highlighting up here and actually play with the code yourself. Now, inside this particular dojo, I have a very simple HTML page, and of course I'm including all the appropriate Kendo UI style sheets and JavaScript. And in order to introduce custom elements to you guys, I'm going to first contrast them with what we call attribute instantiation. Essentially, by placing this data role drop-down list on this select, we can actually instantiate this widget by calling Kendo init, passing it an element, and it'll sort of search through all child elements and instantiate widgets based on these data roles. This might be familiar to a lot of you guys. It's been around for a little while. But of course, I can pass configuration options as data roles. So we see this data-value, just value is a configuration option for drop-down lists. Same thing with data change. That's a drop-down event. And I'm just passing it a reference to a global function here. So if we go ahead and run this, what's going to happen is, as you might expect, we get an instantiated drop-down list. Now, the next thing we're going to do is actually, we're going to just turn this into a custom element. And it's actually pretty simple to do, and what you might consider more semantically correct, given that we can actually get rid of the select part, and we'll start our custom tag with Kendo, and we use a drop-down list to name our custom element, so it's called a Kendo-drop-down list element. Then we go ahead and close that element. Now, because these are custom elements, we actually don't need the data part anymore. One of the tricky things to remember about events, though, is that we do need this on. So it's on-change in order to provide an attribute that assigns a function to be called. That function's typically in the global scope. So let me just make sure I'm reviewing my work here. Yeah, I think we're good. So now if I run this page again, what I should get is the exact same, let's actually add an ID here so that we're looking at something different from an ID perspective. I should get two different drop downs now. And there we go. They basically have the same content. Now notice that I didn't have to instantiate anything. I didn't call Kendo init in order to get this drop-down instantiated from a custom element. It just works. These custom elements just work in the page. Just to show the difference here between these two, I'm actually going to inspect this particular custom element. And one of the things that I want to highlight that makes this custom is the fact that, let's make sure I'm on the right element here. We're going to select that custom element. There it is. And we're going to look at the properties. So as you can see here, I have this custom element selected in the web inspector. And the important thing that I want to show you here is this is actually a real element. It inherits from HTML element, right? And it inherits from element and node and on down the prototype chain. So this is just to show that this is a legitimate HTML element. This is based on the custom elements web component specification. And let's talk about now a couple of factors that we have to think about because these are actually custom elements. Probably the first thing to think about is that with the attribute instantiated version of that dropdown, I can actually just go ahead and use jQuery to access that select element and then call get Kendo UI dropdown list, and that gets me an instance, and then I can call methods on it. And this is very much a jQuery way of going about dealing with that select element, but the custom elements are a little bit different. You can't actually call jQuery methods on it. Like you can't call get Kendo dropdown list. That wouldn't work on these custom elements. So let's look at how we can make that work. Let me bring back up my console here. So now that I've uncommented this console log, if I use this one, we should see, yep, an A change happened. So, sorry, that we're actually getting that from this A change happen function. If I actually run this again, what we're going to see is that this console log down here is grabbing the value out of this first select with the ID of 1. So we want to do the same thing with the custom element. But in order to do that, first we're going to select. Now let's copy the whole thing. We're going to select it using jQuery. But instead, because it's a custom element, I can't really use any of the jQuery methods that Kendo UI provides sort of to get access to the element. And so I I basically am calling these methods exactly on the DOM. So if I grab this element out of the jQuery wrapper, now I'm actually dealing with DOM methods. Believe it or not, we can just call the jQuery methods for the drop-down list straight on that DOM element. So now if I rerun this, here I'll clear this out and rerun it again, I get orange. If I change this to black and I run it, I get orange again. This is just to show that when you're calling methods on custom elements, you have to actually select the element in the DOM and call the Kendo methods on the actual DOM element. There aren't any sort of jQuery glue methods to get you access to it. Okay, it's looking like I'm running a little bit short on time here, so I'm gonna speed things up a little bit. Before moving on to the Angular 2 example, I do want to mention that in order to figure out the proper words or name that you need to use to create the custom elements, in the documentation we have this page that actually shows a list of all the component names. So for instance, if I wanted to remember how to create a Kendo drop-down custom element, I could just come to this list and lowercase any of these names in order to get the proper custom element name. And you can find that in the documentation. Now, one thing I did want to mention really quick is, before getting to the Angular example, is you can actually create these custom elements in an imperative way. So using the DOM method create element, we can actually create these Kendo custom elements with JavaScript. And you see that I'm doing that right here. I'm going to go ahead and uncomment the rest of this code and just try and get back to kind of where we were with the other code example. But just this is just to show you guys, and so that you can have an example and play with it, that you can also create these custom elements with straight JavaScript as well. That's a pretty nice feature. Okay, maybe this might be what everybody's been kind of waiting for, but we are trying to stay in pace a little bit with the pace that Angular 2 development's going on. So as Angular 2 is sort of testing things out and moving in different directions, we're just trying to keep pace and think about how Kendo UI and Angular 2 are going to work together. And so we released this demo, but it's very much a preview demo. When you look at it, we might be a step behind where they currently are today. But I think the key to get out of this demo is that we're very much in pace with Angular 2. We're trying to keep up. And so you can go to the demos, you can run this demo and look. But the key thing I want you to take away from this is this custom element my app. Now, this is an Angular 2 component. I'm actually importing it right here into the page. And if we jump over here, those familiar with TypeScript and ES6 might see a lot of familiar things here, but essentially I'm just using ES6 modules here to load a bunch of functions and some stuff from Kendo. And what this allows me to do is, in an Angular way, set up a component. I define the custom element that I'm using, which was my app. I just showed you that in the HTML page. I create my view. Now notice that I have a custom element here. So it's assumed that Angular 2 is going to rely heavily on some of the web component specifications. We're using the custom element specification, and now that feature of Kendo UI is also being used in Angular 2. And so you see that right here. Now, I'm not going to go into a whole lot more detail about this. Those people who are used to classes and TypeScript, definitely look at this example and just remember that we're keeping pace. We're trying to be there as soon as Angular 2 is ready. We feel like we're going to be ready, and that's mostly what this example is about. Okay, with that said, I don't think I have anything more to talk about here except to wish Kendo UI a happy birthday. And in order to do that, I've actually prepared an interpretive dance. It's actually an interpretive dance on roller skates singing happy birthday. So before I hand it off back to Burke, I just want to say happy birthday with my interpretive dance.
Thank you, Cody. Man, that was a learning experience for me without a doubt. Just when it seems like I have a handle on web development, I feel like everything moves and I'm scrambling to keep up. And I'm fortunate enough to work with some folks who keep me up to date on the latest and the greatest. And Kendo UI is committed to the same premise. It's the same premise that the library was built on in 2011, making modern web development simple, even as the tectonic plates of the web are shifting under our very feet. Many of you are already aware, but we just recently launched the official Kendo UI certification program just last quarter, and we've seen a lot of folks get certified. If you think you've got what it takes to be a certified Kendo UI developer, make sure you sign up and get your Kendo UI certification. I think this is a good time to remind everybody that you can still get your feature ideas in to have a shot to win the iPhone 6s. You can also still tweet out the link and hashtag to be entered to win the lovely iPad Pro, keyboard, and pencil. All you have to do is tweet out the link there, bit.ly/Kendo UI @4. Actually, don't tweet that link. Click on that link. Then you can tweet the hashtag and the page. Listen, if nobody tweets this thing, then I win it. It's mine. So maybe I should stop sharing this link here. Also, remember that the great thing about JavaScript is that you get to use the server-side language of your choice. We provide ASP.NET MVC, JSP, and PHP wrappers, which allow rich integration with your IDEs, as well as some helper methods for dynamic data access and some of the things that are made very difficult by some ORMs. Simply use custom tags and controller methods in MVC to wire up your database instantly. No JavaScript configuration, no parameter configuration, just simple web development the way that God intended. Now, lastly, we always like to remind you that Kendo UI Core is our free and open source version of Kendo UI, and it contains a huge chunk of the Kendo UI Pro library, the majority of the widgets actually. Now, you can grab Kendo UI Core from GitHub, Bower, or directly from the Kendo UI site, a great place to start your projects. We're so glad that you've joined us today for our birthday celebration, and it's not too late to get your feature request in even now. Can I make a feature suggestion? Maybe I could win the iPhone. Kendo UI, React for Kendo UI, anybody? React.js? Anybody out there? Yeah. Did I just win the iPad Pro? Let me check. Nope, TJ says no, I didn't. Okay, well, maybe somebody else suggested it before me. Darn it. Well, remember, it doesn't matter what your suggestion is. If we love it, you win this enormous iPad Pro. Did I just say that out loud? I did. Okay, so with that, we better move into a time of live Q&A. I'll see if I can get Cody and Jen to stick around and help me out. You're going to hear a short break here as we try to merge onto a single conference line. This is always the most tedious part of the presentation for us. For those of you who have to drop off, thank you so much for coming and enjoy the rest of your day or night or wherever you may be.